With a sudden whisk, Axia made her way through a stone hallway littered with torches, her right hand firmly placed on her sword's handle. The torches seemed to grow distant, while she made her way forward, slowing to a brisk walk shortly after. First Artifice, then Sorvel, and now Theron. Axia worriedly muttered, "How do those three have anything in common?" The air seemed to grow colder, and sweat poured down Axia's head while she stood completely still, a deep pit forming in her gut. Gripping her sword tighter, she suddenly jolted her head to the source of this feeling. Yet she couldn't see anything, only sensing a mountain of mana. Debris fell from the ceiling and large cracks began forming on the walls. Before, it was gone. Not even a whisper remained of this unseen presence. Axia stood, breathing heavily, her hand gripped tightly on her chest. Slowly she lifted her head, attempting to catch her breath before a man wearing a red suit crashed through the wall. Axia stood with her gaze fixed upon the wounded man. Slowly scanning over his body, she noticed the long gash on his cheek and the crater within his chest. How did? This is my realm. How did someone get in? Axia hastily thought, drips of sweat breaking the silence. Could it be E.G.S? But how? I cannot sense anything magical or natural. They seem human. Axia tightened her grip before lunging forward, instantly extinguishing the surrounding torches. Her sword gracefully flew, before seemingly striking the man's neck. However, with a sudden jerk, the motionless man dodged forward, narrowly dodging the blade. Stammering back, Axia worriedly pointed her sword toward the man's head. E.G.S. Axia worriedly said, "Is it you?" The man stood perfectly still, a worried expression carved into his pristine face. Gazing at Axia, his green-blue eyes seemed distant, and with a cold but exhausted tone he responded, "Target 4, I offer a duel. We fight with swords, no magic or abilities. If you impress, you will receive a lesser sentence, fail, and receive a greater punishment." Axia gripped her sword tighter, her gaze fixed upon E.G.S, noticing his shallow breaths and leaking wounds. How did he get so harmed? All the rumors said he was impregnable. Axia thought curiously, wait, didn't he make that same offer to the others? There must be some trick to it. I cannot accept it. I need. Don't stress the answer, E.G.S continued with a fabricated smirk. It won't change the outcome. Maintaining her posture, Axia gracefully tied back her long brown hair. Before answering E.G.S in a confident, hopeful manner, I would like to make a request. Instead of your idea, I wish to ask if we could do a traditional god battle. Axia stood in nervous silence, hoping E.G.S would agree. Axia stood waiting in anticipation before a slight chuckle escaped E.G.S, glaring at her with genuine excitement. I will agree to it. Fighting without weightless seems fun. But I'm guessing you want a different outcome if you impress or not. Yes, sir. But I think I understand. I cannot ask for mercy. So instead I'll ask for knowledge. If I impress you, will you tell me why you are hunting us? Axia excitedly exclaimed with a small smile. Then, I'll swear on my name if you, Axia, managed to impress me during our fight. I'll tell you everything about my goals, E.G.S calmly answered. Axia gripped her sword tighter. Weightless, disable. Aura release, she calmly thought, the ground sinking beneath her. Staring back up at E.G.S, she noticed a pure white katana form from nothing, dropping peacefully into E.G.S's hands before he muttered, "Disable weightless." Both stood perfectly still, waiting for the other to make a move. The air slowly started becoming an electric blue, seemingly interacting with the mana emanating from Axia. Suddenly, both E.G.S and Axia teleport closer to each other, their blades connected, leaving black voids in the air, where space itself seemed to distort and warp. Axia held her sword firm, pushing forward, hoping to knock E.G.S off balance. Reality warped around them before E.G.S gained the upper hand, sending Axia flying backwards. Tumbling on the ground, Axia stabbed her sword into the ground. He didn't release his aura? He must be holding back, so I need to figure out my next move. Maybe a spell, Axia hastily thought, the air becoming a deep violet. Slowly walking closer, E.G.S glared at Axia, his eyes softly shifting from a green-blue to a deep red. Axia slowly stood up, glaring at E.G.S. If I used dimensional distortion and my full strength, I could win. She thought, noticing his eyes. I don't like those eyes. It could be a trick, or it means he unlocked blood manipulation's indicator. Both options aren't good. Axia suddenly stopped, standing firm, waiting for E.G.S. to approach. Her heartbeat became louder with each step closer he took. E.G.S. grew closer, and Axia yelled out defiantly, "Dimensional distortion." Axia's body began flashing, vanishing for seconds at a time. Lunging quickly toward E.G.S., she instantly appeared behind him. She turned around, placing her feet on the ceiling, before suddenly pushing herself and launching toward E.G.S., who barely dodged her slash. Axia landed on the ground and vanished, reappearing back in the air behind E.G.S. Falling back toward E.G.S., Axia swings down at him, striking the back of his neck, and in an instant, everything goes black. Axia stood calmly in an empty void, staring at E.G.S. tumbling across the nothingness before he gracefully stood up. Axia glared down at E.G.S., her purple eyes brightly glowing. Slowly, E.G.S. turned his head upward, a sickeningly wide smile hung off his face, and his empty gaze was fixed upon her by his glowing red eyes. "I wasn't bluffing about my eyes," he coldly retorted. Suddenly, Axia's body flew toward E.G.S. against her will. Her very blood became a tool in E.G.S.'s hands. Growing closer, Axia attempted to throw her sword, but her body refused to move. Wasn't bluffing? That would mean. The indicator for blood manipulation was unlocked. If so, I can't stay in his grasp, Axia frantically thought while struggling. What should I do? Maybe a spell. That one. No, I got it. I'll send myself to another universe. Axia thought in silence about her plan, attempting to nod to herself in confirmation. Before reaching E.G.S., she stood floating in silence, before receiving a punch to the face from E.G.S. Using this opportunity, she opened a yellow portal in front of her. And using the force of his punch, she flew through it, tumbling safely to the other side. Axia stood up and noticed she was in a beautiful forest that wrapped around a river, filled with bright green trees stretching into the sky and birds chirping a beautiful tune, but the wondrous sight was quickly eradicated when a deep blue portal appeared, and out E.G.S. strode with a surreal grace, his eyes back to their original color. With an empty applause, E.G.S. softly spoke with a dead voice, "Target 4. I have to say that was quite entertaining. Using dimensional distortion like that, I'd never expect such an application of a worthless spell. However, you seem exhausted, your mental focus is waning." Axia stood in stunned silence, her brown hair blowing gracefully in tune with the wind, before she asked politely, "Does that mean that I impressed you enough?" E.G.S. raised his hand, placing it firmly against his chin. He gazed upward, before calmly responding, "I wouldn't say you fully impressed me, so I'll give you 2 words: wasted potential. But now, I feel we should continue." Axia readied her sword, hoping to throw everything she had at him. Maybe then she could receive the answers she wanted. "Say, John, my dear boy, maybe I'll see you after this is done," Axia carefully thought. Slowly, E.G.S. stepped forward, his footsteps unnaturally silent, and Axia watched in horror as his injuries rapidly healed like they had never existed. Raising her sword once more, Axia stepped backwards, attempting to extinguish her unease. E.G.S. raised his gloved left hand, and with a sudden snap, he was gone. Axia looked around in panic, hoping to see a glimpse of that blood-red suit. "Where'd he go?" Axia muttered, receiving a kick violently against the back of her head. Axia suddenly slammed down toward a strange blue portal, noticing it didn't emanate any mana. Entering the portal, Axia flew through the warm, moist air before slamming into a ragged stone wall in the center of a nearby town. Axia, breathing heavily, attempted to stand, but her body refused, becoming a melted jelly. Sluggishly lifting her head, Axia horrifyingly watched another blue portal open, amidst the town folk giving her a curious gaze. Do I even need to try any more? I can't beat him, so does it matter, she hastily thought. Axia's purple eyes followed E.G.S. calmly through the portal, each movement graceful yet perfect. With each step he took, the air deepened nearly to black. His eyes became a deep red, flowing viscously, with that sickening smile glued firmly to his face. Sweat poured down Axia's head while she struggled to move. Slowly breathing, Axia sighed and hastily thought, I need to get away. Or I risk losing him too. Axia closed her eyes, listening to the silence, before a bright yellow portal opened beneath her with a static hum. Axia's heart began beating faster as time stretched to an abrupt stop. Axia, hearing the trustless silence around her, aimed her gaze with a sudden jolt of energy toward the glowing yellow portal beneath, before it cracked and shattered with sounds that defied time, vanishing. No, why now? I can't, Axia worriedly cried. I can't even muster the strength to create that. How worthless am I? Feeling a deep growing well in her stomach, Axia's body sluggishly began running away from E.G.S's presence. Through buildings and frozen people, she ran, sluggishly traversing through the ragged town. She breathed heavily, with legs that wouldn't stop quivering, yet she continued. E.G.S. calmly stood, staring down Axia, stumbling and crashing. Then, with an elegant motion, he straightened his suit and spoke with a tang of joy. Aura release. 5%. Suddenly, a small semi-transparent green ball appeared above E.G.S's right shoulder, speaking in a robotic tone. Master, I would like to confirm your directive. Did you intend to use such a high amount? Slowly E.G.S. turned his head to face the green ball, his red eyes gleaming in the frozen light. System, full permission granted, he coldly stated. Axia suddenly stopped, sweat pouring down her head. She noticed the strange green orb by E.G.S. Then a loud robotic voice followed, executing command. Axia's heart dropped with the buildings surrounding her, everything melting away into a void of nothing. The wind, the chirping, and even the people were gone. Axia stood motionless, floating in a void extending into eternity. Tears welled in her eyes, and her gaze was locked on the glowing red eyes of the suited god ahead. Axia's body began violently swinging around E.G.S. in a perfect circle while he remained still, looking forward. It was your mistake that cost the people their lives. E.G.S. coldly stated, if you didn't use such a taxing spell, you would have had the mental focus to leave to an abandoned universe as you planned. Is that true? Axia worriedly thought. Did dimensional distortion end those lives? Axia's body continued rotating around E.G.S. before it suddenly stopped, flinging itself at him before a cold hand landed on her chin. E.G.S. pulled her closer, their lips etched closer, but before they touched, E.G.S. whispered, "You didn't impress." Shocked, Axia attempted to close her eyes, but her body was no longer hers to control. Then, a sudden pop. Her right arm had exploded with an unsettling popping sound, like a balloon. Axia tried screaming, yet no sound left her mangled body. Then her body moved downward into a strange cyan portal beneath. Axia entered the portal and fell on a dark grey stone overlooking a pit stretching further than infinity, filled with gods. Her body, free once more, rapidly glanced around, finding that sickeningly wide smile on E.G.S's face, his eyes a deep blue. "Axia, you have not impressed, however. I will grant you this." E.G.S. joyfully spoke, "a sight to the pit, your final resting place. I give you final words." Axia sighed deeply, thinking to herself, before questioning helplessly, "Do you have plans to kill my son?" "I do not have a reason to kill him," E.G.S. honestly answered, "but knowing him, he'll give me a reason one day." "Guess that will have to do," Axia calmly thought. "Why do I feel so calm? I should be screaming internally, yet I feel nothing." Did he? Instantly, Axia was flung into the pit standing ahead, and a sharp, unfathomable pain coursed through her. A deep feeling of longing washed over her, before everything went dark, her mind fading before she landed. Dead.